everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Fiddle. I am an artist, a crafter, and a miniaturist that likes to teach others that they can be creative too. Link to Scavenger Hunt, patterns, and materials is listed in the description box below. And please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment. It really helps me out a lot with YouTube's algorithm. Okay, are you ready? Let's go. Today we will be finishing off our cold porcelain clay dolls with an outfit that includes a corset top and a skirt. I decided that it was a lot easier for me to explain to you how to make a pattern than it would be for me to make the pattern for you, because I'm sure our dolls are all different sizes and that wouldn't translate very well. But this way you can make your own pattern for just about anything. In fact, you can even use this process to making real life size clothes for yourself. It would just take more plastic and a lot more tape. Future goals. But anyways, to begin, we're going to wrap our dolls in grocery bag plastic. We want it to be close to their bodies so that way we really get the shape. Then cut lots and lots of little strips of tape, and this is what we're going to use to make the overall shape. The first few pieces of tape you want to lay down will be an X across the chest and along the underneath side of the bust line. Once you have that X pattern, from there it is pretty much just putting tape all over the chest area, all the way down to the top of where your legs meet the torso. If you wanted to take your doll apart for this, you can, but I think it's easier to do it with it on because this shows you where you need to leave the clearance for your arms. To get a good coverage all over your doll, you're going to want 2 to 3 layers of tape. It'll make it a bit stronger for the process ahead. We will need our guide pattern. You can find that on Patreon. Following the green, the first line we're going to make is down the center of the back. Then the neckline. If you are unsure of yourself on this lumpy surface, you can always use pencil first. And then go back over with marker so your lines are darker, and pencil actually wipes off really easy from this, so you might lose your lines. Next, draw the waistline. We are going to go all the way around the body this time, just above where the legs are attached. Next, we're going to turn our dolls over to the front side and make a line down the center of the body. I forgot to put this line on your charts. Sorry about that. Now you can go around the neck and finish off your neckline. I had mine in the standard V, but you don't have to. You can make this neckline any way that you want. Turn your doll over onto its side, and we're going to draw circles around the armholes. While you're doing this, you can rotate the arm. If you are moving your arm around, try not to go in full circles. Like if you lift your arm up one way, make sure you put it back down the same way. Otherwise, that'll bind up your elastic on the inside and cause problems. Now draw a straight line from the underneath side of your circle under the arm all the way down to the hip. And last but not least, even I forgot this one, and that is the 2 lines down the front of the chest. This is because the pattern needs to be laid flat to get an accurate shape, and this line right here helps us get that. Now that all of our lines are drawn, it's time to cut it out. And the best way I figured out to do this is with a tiny pair of scissors, because they're thinner and can fit in between the layer, and do all of the vertical cuts. I started with the front center of the body, then I did the back side and underneath the arm. When you cut the front and back center line, you can cut them from bottom to top, top to bottom, all the way, and that'll give you 2 pieces. In the end, we'll only be using one side of this pattern and just flipping it. It makes it a lot easier that way, and it makes sure that your outfit is proportionate. Once the pattern is cut out, go ahead and trim all the way to your lines, cutting the waist off from around the neck and under the arms and the waist. Your pattern should come out something like this. If you can't lay it flat, try cutting the line under the breast a little bit higher. Just try not to go too far into it because that might mess your pattern up. Next, we're going to take a thin piece of craft foam. Dollar Tree is awesome for it. and trace your pattern onto the foam because we need to have a little bit of a seam allowance. Add 1/4 of an inch all the way around, following our original lines, except for right at the arm circle. We're not going to add any extra fabric there. The material I'm working with wouldn't allow me to make a seam allowance there and it fold the right way, so I just left it open. If you choose to use a regular fabric, you might have a better chance as long as you cut some slits so the fabric can turn the right direction. When you go to cut the triangle space or the dart out of your pattern, be sure that you are cutting through the seam allowance to the point of the original pattern outline. This will give it the shape that we need so it's not laying flat. Next, cut out and trace your pattern onto your fabric and then cut it out. Okay, when you have your pattern times 2, we are ready to start sewing. And the first seam that we're going to sew is the under the bust line. Fold the fabric along that line, having the inside out and stitched from the top to the bottom. If you started from the bottom and then went to the top, you might have variations in your line lengths on both sides, and that'll throw off the end point or the shaping of the top. I used a lock stitch where you poke the needle through, then wrap the string around the end of your needle, and then pull it tight. This makes a point where there's kind of a simple knot, but it really helps stiff fabrics hold together. I wouldn't suggest this stitch for a stretchy fabric. That would be more of a zigzag or a straight line depending. The next seam we're going to sew is the side underneath the underarm. Fold your fabric in half along this line. I was lucky enough for it to be even on both sides, so I started at the base and worked my way up to the underarm. However, I would suggest that you start at the underarm and work your way to the waist, using the same lock stitch as we were before. If you're using a fabric that unravels, lay a layer of glue stick along your hemlines, and that should stop it from coming apart, at least long enough for you to be able to get it sewn. Every pair of scissors I own are magnetic for some reason. When you get your final knot, you can add a dab of super glue to it, and that'll hold it together even better. Okay, when you get this far, go ahead and do the exact same thing for the other side of your pattern, because we're going to get ready to sew them together, and it's a lot easier if the other seams are already finished at this point. To make our two halves a whole, we're going to sew along the front center seam, with both seams inside out with our lock stitch. I had considered putting the laces up in front, but decided to keep them in the back. If you wanted to do that, this is where you would make that change. Instead of sewing the front, you would sew the back seam. I think I'll try making it that way the next time. I did end up making 2 of these. The first one I made was a little on the big side, so I scaled down my pattern just a little bit. It is the best I've tried to make a corset with. I've used leather actually came from a couch, and I've tried using pleather that came from a chair. This material I think is the best. It takes really good to the stitches. It doesn't crack, and it's not as stiff as real leather is. Okay, once your top is completely sewn together, we can start working on the back. I have quite a bit of excess here, but that's okay. I'll show you how we can fix it. Start by putting your top on your doll and turning her over and pinch both sides of the fabric together to find the center point. Then fold your fabric over and mark your line with a pencil, and this will tell you how far you need to fold your fabric in or how much excess you need to cut off. Mark this on both sides, then take the top off the doll. Once you have your lines laid out, you can start your hem. If you are using this pleather type fabric, you can fold in super glue. If you are using a regular type fabric, you are going to have to sew. When I got to the edge where I wanted the laces to be, I left a little more excess and I also stitched it along the edge because I knew it would be stronger for the pulling and tugging to tighten it up. Next, you'll need an awl, or what I call a pokey tool. We're going to poke holes for the laces. I lined both sides of my corset up and then used the awl to poke holes directly across from each other so that way the laces would be straight. All in all, I think I added 10 holes on each side. Get it? All in all. I'll see myself out. Anyways, you're going to need a decent sized needle that has an eye hole big enough for some embroidery thread and some embroidery thread. Tie a knot in the end of your thread before you start lacing it up so that way it'll stop it from going through. Side note, if you don't have a needle big enough for embroidery thread, you can put glue on the end of your string and let it dry, and it'll be stiff enough for you to be able to get it through the fabric. Before you trim off any excess string, stretch the laces all the way out to where you can fit it on your doll, then cut them. So that way you know you have enough clearance to get it on and off without any troubles. Tie a knot at the end of your string and set it aside, and we're going to move on to the skirt. Using the red lines on our pattern, measure the waist. Then divide that length by how many panels you want for your skirt. I chose 3. The overall shape for the panels are going to be triangles. This is the pattern I came up with. I would say that if you do a scalloped bottom, end your pattern at the points, not the rounded edge of the scallop. Once you have all of your panel pieces cut out, we are going to start with seam 1, then move on to seam 2, and seam 3 and 4 are going to be sewn together, and that would complete the roundness of the skirt, but leave open the waistband for seams 3. To make the closure for the skirt, I measured how wide the waistband was and cut a strip of leather the same width and use it as a panel to poke holes into so we can lace the skirt like the top. I found this to be the easiest way to use closures. Velcro and buttons can be a little bit on the big side for something small like this. I made my strips about a ½ inch long and folded them in half, making a piece for each side of the closure. Then I used super glue to hold it together, at least until I was able to put a stitch or 2 in it. Once they were dry, I took my awl and I poked 1 hole on each side. I thought about doing more to where there was 2 on each side to make a full lace, but there just wasn't enough room on the little waistband for that. When you have your holes poked, go ahead and use the same color thread as you did for the top and lace your skirt. And just like we did for the top, before you cut off the excess, make sure you have enough string to allow to fit on your doll. Don't forget to tie knots in the bottom of your strings, and we are ready to see what it looks like all put together. I am so happy with the way that she turned out. This has been a pretty interesting project for sure. She came a long way from a few pieces of wood and grocery bags to the little character that she has grown into. If you have made it this far, thank you. And please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.